right, so today we're diving into some pretty fascinating stuff about the Fellowship of the Ring. We're going beyond the epic battles and all that to unearth, something a little unexpected.
It's definitely a side of Tolkien that many readers might not be aware of, but it adds a whole new layer to the story.
Yeah, because we're talking about some, serious spiritual depth hidden beneath the surface of this fantasy epic, right?
Exactly. It's like Tolkien snuck in a whole other dimension that often gets overlooked.
Okay, so you're telling me there's way more to Frodo's journey than just, chucking a ring into a volcano. I'm listening.
Absolutely. See, while Tolkien never actually came out and called The Lord of the Rings an allegory, his deep Catholic faith, it really comes through. And that, combined with his love of mythology, it permeates the entire story.
Okay, now you've got me intrigued. So where do we even begin to decode this hidden spiritual layer? What's the first clue Tolkien gives us?
Well, both Spirit Science and Tony Jesse, the authors of the articles we're looking at today, they point to Tolkien's creation myth as the starting point. He doesn't just start with a simple in the beginning. It's more like he's composing a symphony of creation. He talks about the one who creates the world through music.
Huh. So he's mirroring the creation myths we find in so many religions and cultures.
Exactly. He's establishing that foundation of spiritual significance from the very first page.
So Tolkien isn't just building a world, he's echoing the creation of our world, infusing Middle-earth with that same sense of wonder and awe.
Right. And of course, just like in those ancient narratives, Tolkien introduces a force that disrupts that initial harmony. That's where Melkor comes in, the most powerful of the elves. He rebels, rejects that harmony, and becomes Morgoth, the first Dark Lord.
It's hard not to see the parallels to Lucifer's fall from grace, right?
Absolutely. That classic fall from grace, that turn from good to evil. It's a story archetype that resonates across cultures and throughout time. And it establishes this epic, ongoing struggle between good and evil that plays out all over The Lord of the Rings, right?
So we've got this backdrop of creation, the fall, and then Tolkien drops this incredibly potent symbol into the mix, the One Ring. And it's not just about some battle for power between wizards and orcs, is it?
No, not at all. And that's where it gets really interesting. Both sources we're looking at today, they emphasize that the ring is a metaphor for sin.
Okay, so it's not just a powerful object. It represents something much deeper, something that gets at the heart of the human experience.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating is how this metaphor goes way beyond a simplistic good versus evil thing. The ring, it isn't inherently evil. It's more like the seductive, tempting force, you know? It promises power, but ultimately it corrupts and destroys those who crave it.
Yeah, and that's where it really starts to hit home, right? It makes you think about how sin operates in our own lives. It's not always some big, obvious evil. It's those desires, those temptations that whisper in your ear, promising you the world, but leading you down a dangerous path.
Precisely. And that whole invisibility thing the ring offers, that adds a whole other layer to this idea of sin. Think about it. It isolates the wearer. It creates this illusion of separation, not just from others, but also from the consequences of their actions.
Wow. Yeah. It's like how sin can make you feel invisible to the truth, hidden from the damage you're causing, even to yourself. And the more someone gives in to that temptation, the more they pull away, the more isolated they become.
Exactly.
It's that they get lost in the shadows of their own desires.
Yeah.
Trapped by the very thing they thought would set them free.
It's a powerful image, isn't it? And it really gets to the heart of Tolkien's spiritual landscape. It's not just about good versus evil. It's about that void created when we lose sight of what truly nourishes us.
Right, when we chase after those empty promises. But Tolkien seems to be suggesting that there's something more, some kind of sustenance that can help us on those perilous journeys, even in the darkest of times, right?
Absolutely. And sometimes those sources of nourishment, they take on surprisingly familiar forms.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example.
Think about the lembas bread, for instance. You know, that special bread the elves give the fellowship.
Oh, yeah, the way bread. It's always described as having this almost magical quality to it. It sustains the fellowship when nothing else can.
Exactly. And Tony Jesse, he makes this fascinating connection between lembas bread and the Eucharist in Christianity.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
So just as lembas sustains the fellowship on their physical journey, the Eucharist nourishes the soul on its spiritual journey.
Precisely. It's about that deeper sustenance that keeps us going when the path gets rough, you know?
Yeah, it's like both the lembas and the Eucharist, they represent something that transcends just like basic physical needs. They speak to something deeper that needs nourishment along the way.
Exactly. And it gets even more interesting when you think about how Tolkien describes the lembas, Remember how it was said to stay fresh for months, especially when kept in those Malorn leaf wrappings?
Yeah, it was almost like those leaves coming from those sacred trees in Lothlorien. They imbued the lembas with an added layer of, I don't know, holiness.
It's a very insightful observation, and it reminds me of the instructions given to the Israelites in the Old Testament, about how they were commanded to preserve the manna, that bread from heaven, in a golden urn.
So you're drawing a parallel between preserving something sacred, something that represents spiritual nourishment, both in Tolkien's world and within our own religious traditions.
Exactly. It's like Tolkien embeds these echoes of faith, these little hints, directly into the fabric of his story, allowing them to resonate on this almost subconscious level.
And they do resonate, don't they? It's subtle but powerful. But it's not just about physical and spiritual sustenance, is it? There's also a distinct presence of the divine feminine in Tolkien's work.
Absolutely. And it's most prominent in the character of Galadriel, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, she is often referred to as the Lady of Light. That whole scene with the Mirror of Galadriel where she offers Frodo a glimpse into the future, it's like she possesses this deep, almost mystical awareness that transcends the physical world.
Both sources we're looking at today, they suggest that she embodies aspects of the Virgin Mary.
Right. She's even called Lady of Light in the books, which is a clear parallel.
It is. And just like Mary is often depicted as this beacon of light and guidance, Galadriel offers Frodo the light of Arendelle, a source of hope and strength to guide him on his journey.
It's really interesting, the elves, I was rereading the Spirit Science article, and it mentioned how the elves, with their connection to nature and their pursuit of wisdom, they kind of represent this Taoist ideal in some ways.
Yes, definitely. But they also embody this deep sense of sacrifice and devotion, particularly in their willingness to fight against evil, even if it means risking their immortality.
Yeah, they choose to enter the fight, knowing they might not survive. That's a powerful statement.
It is, and that's what elevates them. They're not just these mythical beings, they're almost like Tolkien's vision of saints, figures who stand as beacons of light against the encroaching darkness.
Right, it's a different kind of struggle than what the hobbits face, but both are essential in the fight against evil. It's like Tolkien is saying that there are many paths to take, many ways to contribute. It's like Tolkien is saying everyone has their part to play in the fight, right? Like, no matter how small or insignificant you might feel, your choices, your actions, they matter.
Absolutely. And those choices, they're often fraught with those internal struggles. It's in those relatable human moments that Tolkien's exploration of faith and doubt really shines through.
Okay, so are we talking about characters like Boromir here? Because he starts out as this noble warrior, but then he gets tempted by the ring.
Exactly. That scene where he tries to take the ring from Frodo, it's so powerful. You can really feel the weight of those internal demons, the human desire for power and control.
Oh, totally. It's like all his good intentions, his loyalty, it all gets put to the test in that moment. Mm-hmm. And you can really see that inner turmoil he's going through.
And what makes that scene even more powerful is how Boromir ultimately seeks redemption. Right before he dies, he confesses to Aragorn. He acknowledges his failings, asks for forgiveness. It really aligns with that whole idea of confession in Catholicism, the seeking of absolution and making amends.
It's like Tolkien is reminding us that even in our moments of weakness, there's still hope, right? Like there's always a chance for redemption as long as we're willing to confront those darker parts of ourselves.
Yeah. And that act of forgiveness, the way Aragorn offers that to Boromir even as he's dying, that's a powerful message too. It reinforces this idea that true strength comes from acknowledging those failings and extending grace to others and even to ourselves.
Wow. It's amazing how all of these layers, these subtle details, they add so much depth and complexity to the story. Like those little echoes of faith and redemption, they really make you think.
It's true. And it's not just in those quiet, reflective moments either. Even some of the most action-packed scenes, like when Gandalf confronts King Theoden, it's packed with symbolic significance.
Oh, you mean when Gandalf breaks Saruman's hold over Theoden? It's almost like an exorcism, isn't it? The way he uses his staff and his words, it's like he's driving out this dark force.
It's a powerful image, right? And it directly parallels the Catholic rite of exorcism. The staff, the words, it's like Tolkien is drawing a clear connection between those rituals and the power of faith to banish darkness.
It's like all these elements that might have seemed like, I don't know, simple fantasy tropes before. Now they take on these whole new layers of meaning. It really makes you realize that even in a world of hobbits and wizards and all that, Tolkien was grappling with these timeless questions about good and evil, faith and doubt.
And isn't that the power of great storytelling? The way it can transport us to another world, but at the same time, it can hold up a mirror to our own lives, our own struggles, our own beliefs.
This deep dive has definitely changed how I see the Fellowship of the Ring, that's for sure. It's made me want to go back and reread it with fresh eyes, you know?
It's a journey of discovery that never really ends, and that's the beauty of Tolkien's work. It continues to reveal new layers and insights with every reading.
It makes you wonder what other hidden messages are out there, not just in Tolkien, but in all the stories we encounter. So to everyone listening, keep your minds curious, keep exploring, and remember, there's always more to uncover. Until next time, happy reading.